this point is we take questions from high school students and or other parties in the audience today. So I will ask you to refrain from doing a couple of things. First of all, we cannot discuss this case or the details of this case, so please don't ask questions about this particular case. And my other request to you is please don't, when you're asking a question or making a comment, please do not refer to the court as you guys. And there are a couple of reasons for that, but it happens all the time. Obviously, we're not all guys, and beyond that, that's pretty informal, and we love you, but we're not quite that informal. So please try not to refer to us as you guys. I made that request of the students at Creighton this morning, and somebody referred to us as you guys. So with that, please raise your hand with questions. And you can actually come up to the podium so people can hear, but you don't have to come up to the podium. And don't be bashful.
But it's fun to come up.
Here we go. We've got a question
Right.
on the way.
Hello. My question for the justices here today is, what advice do you on the court have for young people who are interested in pursuing law?
Very good question, and I think you all heard that, but the question is, what advice do we have to young people who might want to pursue a career in the law? Anybody?
Go for it. There is no particular undergraduate degree that you need to be admitted to law school. So when you're picking your undergraduate degree, pick whatever you love, right? Wherever your true interest lies. I was in law school with people who had music degrees. The Chief Justice was an English teacher before he went to law school. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
Where was that at?
So you can get a teaching degree as your undergraduate degree, you can get a science, you can get math, you can get whatever you want as your undergraduate degree, and then go on to law school. While you're in high school, do as much as you can. Get on the debate team, test your mind, stretch your mind, test your public speaking, right? Speak under a whole lot of different circumstances. What you're doing right now, A+, right? You walked right up to the podium and you asked a question. That's good practice.
Thank you, Your Honor.
There are mock trial programs that you can get involved in that are fabulous, and you can go on and do the same thing in college and go up against other colleges and compete there. All of those things will help hone your skills in the law. So those are just some things. You'll get some good suggestions from other folks too.
I'm not so much in the suggestion pigeonhole, but I just comment that one of my law clerks was a theater major, and she was very good at oral argument in her subsequent career.
Well, thank you, Your Honors.
Thank you very much. Who's up next? Yes.
Hello, Your Honors. My name is Gavin, and my question is, how do you guys prepare for cases?
How do we prepare for cases? Anybody?
It's a lot. It's a
Don't
lot
be
of.
bashful.
It's a lot of reading. So almost all of the cases that we get, including the case that you just heard today, are coming from another court. We're reviewing the decisions of another court, and rather than having all the witnesses and if there's a jury and everybody come back and retry the case, it's all taken down on paper. The testimony is taken down. The documents that are exhibits are compiled, and they come to us in big boxes, and we read everything that happened in the trial court, and then the attorneys get the chance to make arguments to us in briefs, and so that's more reading, and then we'll prepare memos for each other to review, and we may do research on the laws, which may require us to read statutes or prior cases, or like in this case, regulations, and what we're doing is we're looking at what the appellant has alleged, what mistake the appellant has alleged that the lower court made, and we're looking at the law and seeing if the lower court correctly applied the law to the facts. So almost all of our preparation is reading, but it's reading a lot of different materials and a lot of different stuff.
So the obvious lesson today is, and you all will be smarter than the average person on the street, is to know the difference between what happens at the trial court and what happens here at the appellate court. We don't rerun the trial and see who was telling the truth, right? It's been funneled up to us.
Sorry for referring to you guys as that. I didn't realize. Again, I did it.
You
I'm sorry,
caught
justices.
it. Thank you very
You're
much.
very brave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've told the Chief Justice a number of times, I think we're losing that battle.
Very good. Okay, who's next? Yes.
I would like to ask the court what the most difficult part of earning your degree or major and becoming a member of the Nebraska Supreme Court was.
And I will rephrase that as, what was the most difficult part of getting through law school and getting through the profession to the Supreme Court? How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Anybody?
I think like all jobs, there's good and bad parts of your job. And when you're going through the bad parts, the parts that are hard, and you've worked really hard on a case back as an attorney, and you put all the blood, sweat, and tears into it, and then you're unsuccessful, and have to have that long conversation with your client, those are really hard times. And then when you do on the opposite side of it, those are really good times. But I believe those are the same type of thing you're going to face in anything you choose to do in life. So what we're doing is anything easier or harder than anybody else. It just happens to be specific for our profession. So it's basically the hardest part is always getting through the tough times and whatever you choose to do.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
You're one of our bailiffs.
Good afternoon,
Good
justices.
job.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a question for you justices. What influenced you all to get involved with the law?
Very good. What influenced us to get involved with the law?
Well, I'll start. It was the family business. My father was a lawyer, and when I left the University of Nebraska Law School 40-some-odd years ago, I headed home to practice with him, and I thought that's what I would be doing the rest of my career. Since then, I've been a district court judge, a court of appeals judge, and now on the Supreme Court. So obviously, life took me in some different paths than I anticipated. But that's how it started, in the family business.
I was fortunate enough to have a neighbor that was a county attorney and then a judge. He took a liking to me and kind of directed me on a path of how I should move forward in college and law school and then the practice of law. So I would suggest that if you have interest in the law, you reach out to people like us or judges in your community or lawyers and ask them if you could follow them or job shadow them and see if it's something that you enjoy. And if you do, those people can be very important mentors and just kind of help you with the steps you got to do and things that you should avoid doing, and be invaluable, I think, to move your goals forward. So.
When I was in high school, I met with my guidance counselor, and back in the late 70s, when you met with your guidance counselor, there was a whole stack of cards that you went through with different occupations on them, and they broke them down into little traits of that job. And you would look at it and you'd say, does that sound like something I like? If so, it goes in this pile. If it doesn't sound interesting to you, it goes in that pile. And I did that little exercise, and my guidance counselor told me that I really ought not go into the law, and that I was probably better suited for something like forestry, to be a park ranger. She thought I had perfect skills for that. So I guess I tell the story to say they're not always right when you do the testing, and you should probably follow your interests.
I'm gonna tell you a story, but I'll make it the executive version because it's a little similar to Justice Stacy. I was already interested in the law when I was in college. I am not a good test taker. I had good grades and poor LSATs. Those are the tests you take to get into law school. And in those days, you would go for an interview to get into law school. And here's the part where I'll name names because this is a public story. So, and I grew up in California, so I went to Stanford Law School, and they said to me, don't bother to apply, you have no aptitude for the law. But we ignored that. We ignored that, and here I am. And in the practice, at some point before I went on the bench, I was hired by Stanford to represent them in a case, and I did it at trial, and I did it at the Court of Appeals, and they thanked me for it, and the lady who was the inside counsel said, oh, how can we possibly thank you? I think, oh, now comes the time for the and it gets better. There's more, right? And I said, here's how it unfolded, but evidently I do have an aptitude for this line of work. And she was like, OMG, my husband is the dean of the law school. I got a bouquet.
Very good.
Thank you, Justices, for your time.
Thank you very much. Who's up next? Yes, sir.
Clear back there. Oh, got another
There we go. So what do you think has been the most interesting part of getting to be on the Supreme Court of the state of Nebraska?
What has been the most interesting part of being on the Supreme Court of the state of Nebraska? Anybody?
Well, one interesting part is the variety of kind of cases we get. So any kind of case that starts in a state court in Nebraska, almost any kind of case, could make its way up to us. And so because of that, there's just a huge variety in the kind of cases we get. So it would not be uncommon for us to have a day where we might have a criminal law case involving everything ranging from assault and theft to homicide to business disputes, divorces, child custody disputes, breaches of contract, personal injury, all the kind of things that you can imagine that people might have disputes about can make their way to us. And so it's always different kinds of cases and always new and interesting facts for us to encounter.
To build on what others have said, we see all of that human drama, but most of the time we don't see the actual drama. We see the after effects of the drama, but we're all cognizant of the real people, the real parties, the real children, the real victims, the real participants that we typically do not see. We normally see the lawyers who are here arguing the case at the final stage, but there's still that human drama that's a big part of the story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who's up next? Okay, we've got a case, the young lady way in the back.
Hello, Your Honors. Why does the Supreme Court come to high schools to do cases like these instead of a courtroom?
Question, why does the Supreme Court come to high schools like this? Because that's our favorite part of the job. We come to high schools like this. We started doing this about 10 years ago, and we try to do it 3 times a year. When we have long before any of us were on the court, the Supreme Court has always gone to the 2 law schools here in Nebraska to have oral argument sessions there once a year. Once a year to Creighton, once a year to the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And about 10 years ago, when we came to the session at Creighton University, we decided that that would be a good opportunity to visit a high school because we want folks to understand the judiciary, the importance of the judiciary in any democracy, and especially in our democracy, and to the folks of Nebraska. And so it's part of, the court has a lot of responsibilities, and one of them isn't directly to educate the public, but we especially want young people to have a civic understanding of court systems and how they work. We went to Central High 10 years ago, and that was approximately at the time of the 150th anniversary of the state of Nebraska statehood. And as you all know, Omaha was originally the capital, and where Central High sits is Capitol Hill. And so the Nebraska Supreme Court originally sat at that location in Omaha, Nebraska, before the capital was moved to Lincoln. So that was our first visit to a high school, and since then we've expanded that. We visit one metro area high school when we come to Creighton, and once a year we try to go somewhere into the vast reaches of greater Nebraska. Last year we went to McCook, we've been to Scotts Bluff, and we also, earlier in the fall, we try to go to some place in greater Nebraska that is not as far as Scotts Bluff. So we've been to Nebraska City and Beatrice and so forth. But it's part of a bigger opportunity that we want young people to understand the courts, and we want old people to understand the courts too.
Thank you, Your Honors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we've got another hand back here.
Hello, Your Honors. Let me ask, sorry. What impact has this occupation had on your social lives? And was any of it like significant to you when you were first starting your education journey?
What impact has being on the court or being a judge had to our social life?
What social life?
Anybody?
What social life? It's pretty.
You have to have a social life beforehand to have an impact.
Yeah, get that out of the way.
You do have to be obviously a little cognizant of the things that you do. We have a responsibility as judges not to put the judiciary in a bad light. So if we're out doing something in the public that would not look good for the judiciary, then we shouldn't be doing that. So even before we got to the Supreme Court, all judges sitting have thought about that and what it looks like to the public. The public has to have confidence in the judiciary. You have to feel comfortable that the people that are sitting in these positions are people you want to be sitting here, and that their decisions are going to be made on the right factors. If we're out doing something crazy in the public, you're probably going to lose some confidence in our decision making. So those are things that I think we all have to take into consideration. We also have to be fair and impartial. You want to have confidence when you come to have a case heard before us that we aren't going to side with somebody because we spend Friday nights playing poker with them or something of that nature. You want us to be fair and impartial. So those decisions weigh into our social life. We won't usually go out and hang out with lawyers because they may come before us, and then if somebody isn't in that group, may think, well, we're biased towards them because they weren't with us in a social activity. So we try to be very careful what we do and how we do it, and so it does impact our social life.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? We've got a question over here. Again, from one of our bailiffs. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed the experience. Can I ask the court, so I know we touched on the backgrounds and possibly a little bit on the majors. Can I ask specifically what each member of the court majored in before law school?
Here you go.
History.
Criminal justice and political science.
Political science?
English.
Started in journalism and then changed to accounting.
I was accounting as well.
I started in engineering, ended up in law, so I ended up with math and criminal justice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have time for probably one more question. Okay.
I was going to ask how you decide which cases you hear.
Very good. How do we decide which cases that we hear? Well, there are some cases that we have to take by statute or other authority, and those would be on the criminal side of the docket. We have to take life imprisonment cases and death penalty cases, and we are supposed to take cases that have constitutional issues in them, and that can get a little fuzzy and gray, but it is the responsibility of the lawyers who represent a particular side of a case to point out constitutional issues if there are constitutional issues in a case, particularly if they are asking that a statute be declared unconstitutional, and part of that process is they're supposed to notify the Nebraska Attorney General's office, so that office has the opportunity to intervene and protect the constitutionality of a statute, if you will. We try to fill out our docket with cases that we think are of particular importance to the people of Nebraska and/or cases of first impression on interpreting a statute in the state. All of this that I'm blathering about, you should have the background information that there is a court of appeals in Nebraska too, an intermediate court of appeals. So the way appeals happen, they come from the trial courts, and each county in Nebraska has a county seat with a county court and a district court, and those appeals then, the unhappy party gets to appeal, and that appeal might, if it isn't one of the topics I've just touched on, that appeal likely will stay with the Court of Appeals and not come directly to us. But if you don't like what happened in the Court of Appeals, you can ask us to review what happened in the Court of Appeals. So pretty much in Nebraska, you've got a right to appeal darn near anything, and then those cases I talked about come to us, and others may stop at the Court of Appeals. Okay, that's kind of a wrap. Do we have one more question back there? We'll take one more.
Hello. Hello, my name is Adrienne Zook. How does one get into a place in their career that they can join the Nebraska Supreme Court?
Good question. How does one get to the point in their career that they can join the Nebraska Supreme Court? Anybody? Did anybody go through this process?
Well, all judges in Nebraska at whatever level go through the same sort of process that begins with practicing law as a lawyer and then applying for an open position after someone has retired, resigned, or died. And then there is a local nominating commission that considers the applicants for that vacancy. It's a little more complicated, but I'm keeping this to the bare bones, that they will look at the applicants and determine, are they qualified to be appointed? And they have to send at least 2 names, or 3, depending on whether you're reading the Constitution or the statutes, to the governor, and then the governor makes an appointment. And then after that, the person will stand for a retention election essentially every 6 years, although the first time is a slightly shorter period. All of the judges on this panel have gone through that process at least once. Some of us have gone through it as many as 3 different times for 3 different levels of courts. So to get to this court, you have to persuade the nominating commission or commissions for this court. The Chief Justice has a commission, and each one of the rest of us come from a specific geographic district, and there's a nominating commission for that district. In my case, for example, the 3rd Judicial District for the Supreme Court is essentially Northeast Nebraska, and I had to persuade the nominating commission for that area that I was qualified, and then had to persuade the governor that I should be appointed. And that, in essence, is how you get here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I hate to cut this off, but that's pretty much a wrap. Again, thank you so much for hosting us, everybody here in Papillion. And I hope it was a learning experience for you, and it's always a learning experience for us. So thank you all very much. Doris has a question.
Pictures.
Would the court be amenable to having like 3 different pictures taken, one with the mock trial team, one with the student ambassadors, and then Carol's team of media students?
No, for security purposes, we'd never have our pictures taken. No, we'd be happy to have our pictures taken.